together. Make every day count, don't waste it, people. Do your part, play a role, get where you need to. You can tune in for work or in your vehicle. If you got a problem, pick up the phone. Why wait till the time? Call in, it's a show. It no matter even if you're at home. Just call in, call in, call in. WB. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving. Na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB. Be yourself, see yourself. This is a show, my people. Belize our hope, so to needless reason. Nobody feel left out is the vibe we're dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's how we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes. WB. And all the things that will be happen under God blue skies. And nothing that people get victimized. Let's work together for better. We got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving. Na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB.
Met office, and then we give you an update from our news center. So we'll go now to the Met office.
Fair weather today and tonight will support cloudy spells with isolated showers or thunderstorms, except for a few more over southern areas tonight. A similar trend will follow Saturday and Saturday night. Winds today along the coast and over the open sea.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989, Creme FM presents the news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional and international news, weather and sports. And now, the news.
And now for our news package for this morning. Minister of Natural Resources, Honorable Cordell Hyde, yesterday went into great details about the process that was followed to arrive at a new location for the university hospital. The matter has become controversial due to the exorbitant price paid.
As you probably saw in our press release, Ministry of Health went to Cabinet some months ago and made a compelling case to say that where we were proposing to put the hospital on UB land was not the most ideal, was really not workable for them, pointing out that the location was 9 kilometers from the roadside, which is 6 miles, that you had to build a road, that getting there would have required going through a circuitous nature. I don't know what that means, but ultimately they didn't have water, didn't have light, didn't have internet. All those kind of infrastructure would have to go in there, and you're talking about virgin territory. You're not talking about existing road or dirt road or anything like that. And so that would have represented an undue burden also for workers, for staff, and for people who need to access the hospital. So Cabinet was convinced that ultimately the professionals, the technocrats at the Ministry of Health were the right ones to determine which location is best for them. And so we left that in their hands. They then approached the Ministry of Natural Resources technocrats to check to see what is available in that particular location, which is to say between the Hector Silva airstrip and Guanacaste Park. Why? Because the technocrats at the Ministry of Health deemed that to be the primary nexus, the best meeting point, best middle ground for patients coming from the west, patients coming from the far south. And so they came to us, our technocrats did research, presented to them that one, there is no government land there, and two, that you have about 6 private parcels there. 2 of them have erections on them, the other 2 are some ways off the road, and there were 2 owned by one owner who that was roadside. The Ministry of Health people indicated that that's the land they wanted. That was ideally what they were envisioning, and so negotiation ensued. The private landowners got their valuation, which came in at $9.3 million. You'd say that's kind of high for 15 acres of land, but the valuer for their part argued that in 2020 a lot for $100,000 was sold for $100,000 just nearby, and that they were in the process of finalizing a subdivision of those 15 acres into lots and commercial properties to translate that into income. And so based on that, they came up with this 9.3 million. Government valuer came up with 6.2 million. You'd wonder how 2 valuers look at the same land and come up with varying value. But our valuer for the government made a bunch of deductions. He conceded that yes, land was selling in that era as long as it was 4 years ago for $100,000 a lot. And in fact, it was increasing incrementally, because in 2018 lots were being sold there. People were buying lots there for $65,000, and then in 2019 they were buying for $75,000, and then in 2020 lots were sold there for $100,000. So based on that, they came up with the high figure that they came, but the valuer for the government made some deductions based on roads and survey costs and all that kind of stuff, and so it ended up being 6.2 on the government side, 9.3 on their side, and negotiation.
Minister Hyde was also asked to address the fact that the new hospital land sits smack in the middle of 2 flooded areas and not far from the BWS sewage treatment ponds.
Well, the people in the technocrats in our ministry felt that the land is, that particular parcel of land or parcels of land is elevated as compared to the areas that are nearby that's low-lying and prone to flooding. So they felt like that particular area wouldn't be susceptible to that kind of flooding. The truth of the matter is that the entire country is flood-prone. I mean, we're living in 2024, and with climate change and all that has happened in this country, there is no perfect location. You have a very serious rainfall, or you have very serious weather, you're going to have flooding. As it relates to the bridge, that's a serious matter. I don't forget about the new hospital. You're talking about not having access to Belmopan, not having access to the entire Cairo district if you're coming from the city. Forget the hospital. So it's incumbent upon government to figure out a way to get that bridge in the shortest possible time. Not just because of the hospital, but because what it means in terms of access to the entire western part of the country in the event of a very, very serious calamity.
But how will you manage the sewage ponds in the same area so close to a hospital?
Well, the technocrats say that it is located like 5 acres away from the proposed hospital site. To be precise, 4.8 acres. That is some distance versus the fact that you have very nice houses from Cahoon Walk and those areas that's located 200 feet from the sewage pond, you know, very, very close to it. So that's something that they have to manage, but I'm no expert, and I guess the expert will have to determine that for us, whether 5 acres is space enough between a sewage lagoon and that kind of development. Our technocrats believe it is, but you know.
Do you know the owner, Kenny Zeng?
No, I don't know the person at all.
The Prime Minister conceded that the investment ambassador, Mr. Diab, that he might have a relationship with Mr. Zeng. Would you classify this as a sweetheart deal?
Well, I just explained to you how this location came about, how the Ministry of Health went to Cabinet, proposed or convinced Cabinet that the proposed location in UB was not cutting it, that they needed a more ideal location. They settled on this location. They went through the various parcels. They determined that this was their parcel. I don't know that that fits the definition of a sweetheart deal.
Minister of Infrastructure Development, the Honorable Julius Espat, also spoke on the change in location.
It started that the loan was negotiated with the Ministry of Economic Development. So we were informed of that, and we knew that a hospital would be built. And we knew that it would be on the UB property. So that is what Cabinet knew. Then Ministry of Health lobbied for a presentation to be made in Cabinet, where there was a couple doctors came in, I think led by Miss Diaz, and they made a plea that they didn't believe that it was feasible for them, from their point of view, to have it at the back of Belmopan. And so that's where the lobby started. And then we found out that the Ministry of Economic Development took that lobby serious, and then they looked for possible locations and they found one. Last Cabinet, the Deputy informed us that they were working with the Ministry of Natural Resources, with their evaluators, along with private evaluators, to be able to come up with a number. And that's how it was derived. Every option has positives and negatives. That's just what it is. I'm an architect, so when we build, you look at all options. UB could have been a good option with time. It would have. We haven't looked at it from our ministry in detail, but it would have meant that you'd have to spend $6 million or maybe more in infrastructure to reach the hospital. And that could be good, because then other people would benefit from the infrastructure going in. So that's a positive thing for that side. But the expediency of having the hospital being built, we would have taken maybe 2-3 years to get that project on the way. And so I think that, speaking with the Saudis, they wanted it now. And so that's where the option came about. That's it is in a flood-prone zone. I think the deputy said it well. Belize is in a flood-prone zone, and that if you have it there and the road floods, you know, have the ability to take your patients to Belize City. Well, if you have it in Belmopan and you have a flood, yeah, the same thing will happen, because it's on the main highway. We know of the flooding areas, and we have started to address it. I think Plus TV knows it more than the other media there in Belmopan. They saw that we are working on the J&W bridge already, which is the first phase of making that area have free flow of water. So that bridge is about, I'd say, about 75% completed. And then we have a project called the George Price Rehabilitation Project that is on the Ministry of Finance's desk, and that one incorporates bridges in the Mount Pleasant area that would also alleviate that area. So with time we will address all those issues. We recently addressed the one in Roaring Creek, where after the road was built, we noticed that there was a flooding, that you couldn't cross the Roaring Creek bridge. We have already addressed that part of it already. So all proposals have their pros and cons, and we have to look at it in detail, and the job of the media is to dissect it and bring out the truth. And I think that is what has been achieved, and I think that's positive.
There is a criticism that the investment ambassador, Mr. Diab, is friendly with the Kenny Zeng, the owner of the land. Now, when you were in opposition, you drew a hard line against these types of deals, sweetheart deals. Do you consider this to be one of those?
I don't know the relationship the both of them have. I don't know the gentleman personally. I know the ambassador because he's part of the campaign team for the party. But
3 bus operators who provide service to Belize City have joined forces and have written a letter of objection to the Minister of Transport, Honorable Rodwell Ferguson, regarding the e-bus pilot in Belize City. They are Lopez Shuttle, Lamont and Sons Bus Service, and City Shuttle Limited. Their message is that despite fear of political victimization, they are breaking their silence. Otherwise, they will be, quote, run out of business by their own government, end of quote. They note that they don't have a problem with competition, but yes, with unfair competition, and described this as the case given that the city council is using free buses to, quote, go head-to-head with private sector stakeholders, unquote, who have financial obligations. The operators state that despite what the mayor has said, the e-buses route are cutting into theirs and are taking away their primary clientele, the students, whose fare, according to the trio of bus operators, has been brought down to only $1. The bus operators say that since the introduction of the e-buses, they have been taking daily losses and believe that the situation is unsustainable. The bus operators are now demanding the publication of monthly financials and non-financial data collected under the pilot, including the number of passengers, the revenues, and the expenses. They are also requesting that all revenues collected be passed on to the stakeholders on the basis that the expenses are covered by the EU and the UNDP. The bus operators also want a guarantee that there won't be any more e-buses introduced into Belize City. The letter was copied to the Mayor Bernard Wagner and the UNDP representative in Belize. On Wednesday evening, the funders and the government partners issued a joint statement to clarify the outcome and objectives of the project. Notably, they generalized those by stating that, quote, the aim is to enhance access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services while advancing low-carbon transportation, end of quote. But as to the concerns of the operators, the release also states, quote, we recognize the concern of the private sector and their critical investment in Belize's bus industry. As a result, this pilot project is designed not only to transform the transport sector, but also to explore innovative business models and financing mechanisms, which are vital for cultivating a more advanced private sector-driven development process, end of quote. A majority of the remainder of the joint statement then focuses on the next 3 e-buses that will be deployed inter-district. According to the release, those buses will be managed by the private sector, but will remain the property of the UNDP. The release also states, quote, this phase will focus on evaluating the financial feasibility of private sector management, developing a comprehensive business case and outlining key commercial terms, ultimately aiming to facilitate a potential public-private partnership to bridge the gap between the public and the private sectors, end of quote. The body of a man was discovered Thursday morning by the seawall on Front Street in Punta Gorda, Toledo. The man has since been identified as 44-year-old Jensen Vernon. He had several cut wounds. Vernon's body was transported to the Punta Gorda Hospital, where it now awaits a post-mortem examination. Police say that they are seeking one person of interest as their investigation continues. Early this week, the Ministry of the Blue Economy announced that it is exploring the possibility of launching a pearl culture initiative along with their industry's innovation consultant, Nancy Marin. She pitched the idea and it was supported by the higher-ups in the ministry. Last week, as part of their feasibility study, they visited an oyster pearl farm in Mexico. We spoke with Marin on the expectations for this initiative.
11 years ago, I started thinking about building industry in Belize and started doing some research about the assets that we have in Belize. I coincidentally came across a project in India on cultured pearls. And I started doing investigations and found out that it is quite possible to do it in Belize with some species that we're supposed to have in our waters. So now fast forward to today, I proposed it to the Ministry of Blue Economy, and the CEO and Minister of Blue Economy gravitated to the idea of doing that, because our country really needs industry and we need to think out of the box, you know, and do things a little bit differently than we have been doing through the years. So we're just really creeping right now. We're in the initial phases of the feasibility study, but I can tell you that it looks really good. And the two species that I had identified 11 years ago and hoping that we have, it looks like we do have it now. Studies have to be done with the technical people at fisheries to find out if we have a healthy population or not. That's the next phase of the project, to find out if indeed we have a healthy population. But even if we don't, that won't be a problem, because there are ways to boost it up through the
Marin, about the possibilities of employment in such an industry and for entrepreneurs to take it up.
It is more technical than labor intensive. We will need to partner with somebody we haven't identified yet to train our people. Now, I still have a meeting on the 20th with the Minister of Blue Economy and their heads of departments to really inform them. But what we learned in Sonora, Mexico, is that it will not take a huge amount of capital to get to where we are, but it will be labor intensive to start with. After we have the infrastructure, have our people trained, it should be a walk in the park.
More or less, how much time will it take to actually see something come to fruition?
I believe that I'm hoping, fingers crossed, everything goes well. By the end of 2025, we should have seen the initial establishment of it's not going to be long, because we have the natural resources. And this is what I was saying with my research, that I really dug deep and read, you know, all the mining reports and everything to know what do we have in Belize naturally that we can build on, that won't cost our government or our people the kind of money that we don't have. And you asked earlier whether we want to work with entrepreneurs or how that's going to go. And I am really hoping that we can develop the program where we can have various farms and entrepreneurs can be the ones that manage those farms.
Marin and the team from the Ministry of the Blue Economy next intends to visit Yucatan to see an area where sea sequestration is happening. That is a second initiative the ministry plans to pursue. And that's our news package for this morning, prepared by our news center here at CREM radio as well as XTV. There's more news coming up. There's a brief at 12 on Creme Radio, another brief at 3 o'clock, and a full news broadcast at 5:15. All of this on Creme Radio. Here on XTV, we will bring you a full broadcast of the news at 6 o'clock this evening. It's now a minute after 7 o'clock. We'll take a short break and open the phone lines and begin our conversation for this Friday.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. The news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports.
conversation for this Friday morning, the 16th day of August 2024. We welcome you to the program. Our telephone numbers here, 280-5848. As I said, a little bit after 8 o'clock break, we will be having a guest. But right now, the conversation is between you and I and those who will, of course, call us, whether at home or abroad. I want to congratulate Bilal and Aria Lightfoot for a very engaging show last night. They had an interview with Ernesto Castillo, who was the former Consul General for Los Angeles. And it was a very dynamic show. He was full of history. And so I want to congratulate them. And for those of you who have not discovered Naval String Connection as yet, it's every Thursday night here on XTV. And we hope that you will tune in and engage. I mentioned yesterday very briefly about an initiative which I rate because it's something long in coming. The Caribbean Development Fund has given to Belize through its Belize Enterprise Empowerment Project a loan, or maybe a grant, I'm not sure, of $800,000 Belize dollars, 400,000 US dollars for this project. And this project, as we said yesterday, is aimed at small and micro-sized businesses in Belize. It's between $5,000 and $20,000, and that's good money for a small enterprise to give it a grounding, to get it started, and to nurture it. What I'm understanding is this project will involve not just the giving out of money, but it will incorporate a very essential part, because when we are giving money because we don't have a background in managing funds, we're not really have a culture of business. And I think we don't need to talk much about that because we all see, sometimes we start a little small shop and that little shop will last for a very long time, but it is very contained. It doesn't go to any more than just that little small enterprise. But enterprises are made to expand and to grow, to take the profit and to reinvest and expand. And it's also a benefit if you are able to employ more people, the larger the enterprise grows. So this project will include financial management. Yesterday we spoke about this incubator concept, which is basically covering the small business person in an area where they're getting the training, they're getting the financial literacy training, they're getting ways in which they can develop markets, etc. All these things are essential for helping a business to get off the ground. And this is what this $800,000 will be doing. I understand it's in cohorts, it's in phases, and so that first phase will look at as much as 95 different entrepreneurs throughout the country. So if you're a small business person or if you're thinking about going into business, get in contact with these people at Bell Trade and see how you can get assistance for your business. Our numbers here is 280-5848, and you're welcome to call in. I wanted to give an update on the SOE, the state of emergency, because we are heading a team there that is going in weekly to engage these young men through a process that we believe will benefit them while they're in that 3-month detention. I won't go into the pros and cons of should we or we shouldn't have. It's a long argument, and it's been argued over the last month or so. The fact is, from my perspective, these brothers are in detention. And what do we do? Just leave them in detention and say that they just served 3 months and then let them go? Or do we use this opportunity as like a captured audience, if you'd like, that can engage them in some self-reflection? And we talk about self-reflection because at the end of the day, it's the decision and the choices that you make that will determine how you navigate a very upside down system that we're dealing with now. Let's not pretend that what is going on out here is normal or it's fair. It's a very unfair and skewed system that we're dealing with now. But despite the fact that it's complicated, a lot of people have been able to navigate and not fall into crime and not fall into some of the things that will constrain them in their development. And so we are hoping that while these brothers are there, that these self-development areas that we are dealing with them will help them, those at least who could hear, because not everybody you talk to hear. Whether you're putting your attention on what's being presented to you will determine whether you grasp. But if you're just hearing things and you're not paying any attention, then that will not grow anything. So those brothers who are there for the next month and a half, because they've been there about a month and a half already, are being engaged by a team that is going in there twice a week. And this team includes Brother Ray Futigongara, Mr. Andrew Dawson from the LIU, Sergeant Valdez, also Constable Swazo and Bengoshe. We also had Brother Sticks as a part of the team. And what this team does is to engage these young brothers to look at what's going on. To engage meaning to have a conversation and to find out from them some of what the challenges are in their early life. We've talked about early childhood trauma and how that does not only affect them, it affects many of us have gone through traumatic situations as we were growing up and needed to find out how do I deal with putting that behind me or understanding what happened so that that negative trauma does not continue to impact my life. So we're getting into those kinds of depth. Yesterday, our conversation was around the idea of knowing yourself. And you may say, well, what the hell are you doing talking to them, boy? Make them just stay there and make them just suffer because they're alone gangsters anyway. That is not an accurate picture of what these young brothers are. That's a very distant description of them. I'm a little emotional only because the fact is that in this society, many of us have thrown these brothers away. We have basically come to the conclusion, partially due to the media exposure and how the media looks at the crime situation in the Middle East, many of us have thrown these brothers away. In fact, at the highest level, at the cabinet level, there is murmuring of maybe what we should have done is to change this idea of SOE for a short term and increase the time that these young men are incarcerated. Some have suggested that we look at the Bukele example and maybe they will get a sense then. And the reason for that, you could understand some people's frustration of seeing SOEs after SOEs and then saying, well, how long will it last before we go into another SOE? And some people throw out the concept of SOE altogether. SOEs is not the solution. SOEs, if you continue perpetually having SOEs, you're really not solving the problem. but SOE strategically can have a benefit. Jamaica has just gone into, I think, like its 17th or 18th SOE last week. And this is in the area of Clarendon. And these short gap measures do not solve the overall issue of crime, because crime is not just the incident of that criminal act, but there's an entire story behind why that person is engaged. And the state is partially to blame for not putting in place the structures that will prevent the amount of young people that fall into the issue of crime. So you cannot look at crime only as the act of an individual. Of course you have to, because that's an individual that's charged. You have to watch the evidence. You have to present it to the court. And if he's found guilty, he must be punished according to the law. But a sociologist or a historian will not just look at one incident. They will look and ask the question, why so many are being charged with the same crime? And why so many of a particular community is involved in that crime? And what are the circumstances in that community that causes people to continue to commit crime? That's how you look at it. So yes, we could look at the individual and say, yes, he committed a crime, he should pay for his crime. And we're doing that. But if we want to understand this criminal behavior, and if we want to make a progress over a period of time on it, we have to approach it in a much broader way, which brings in socio-economic, psychological, spiritual aspects of what is causing the problem. So going back to what we're doing at the SOE with our team is basically to say we have a captured audience here. Instead of just having these young men remain in their cell for 3 months with not engaging in any way, the LIU has taken up the responsibility to say, we are going to engage these young men while they're there, go into certain issues so that they can at least look at themselves and look at their situation. Perchance, they will have the the tools within themselves to observe and navigate a very troubled issues that's in the community, to try to avoid some of these issues that is impacting them and steer away so that they are able to make progress. If this can work in link with other initiatives within the government is saying that it wants to provide opportunities for more jobs. It is doing that with the LIU to provide a stipend kind of arrangement with some of these young men. Why? Because a lot of these young men, unfortunately, did not finish primary school, certainly did not finish secondary school. They don't have not even a vision of going towards tertiary level education because of some of these socioeconomic issues, but they have to eat. And so the LIU provides them at least something that they are able, as an unskilled laborer, to be able to at least take home or leave it a small change. It is not to say that these young men may or should remain at that very basic, very elementary level of the economy, but if they at least have something in their stomach, at least have something that they can think, then they can move on to another level if opportunities are provided for them. So I look at this 800,000. That is for young entrepreneurs, and saying that the technical people in these areas have to see that there is a need out in that community. And they need to be able to go in to these areas with these young men and see ways in which they can help them to navigate and find a path out of where they are at that economic level to something better. And that can be done through these same trainings that this Beltrade intends to do with the MSME sector. These youths can be incorporated into that likewise, rather than leave them at these very basic small change level that they're getting. And I'm not discounting that small change level is very necessary, because without it, there's sometimes the vulnerability in, I guess I have to go out and rob, I have to go out and do something, because I can't sit down here on my hand and watch my family needing things and we can't produce. So it's not an easy solution that we're dealing with out there. It's a generational situation that we're dealing with out there. Just this morning I was counting how long ago we started this initiative called CYDP, which again, all these initiatives over the last 20, 30 years are just different names and different approach, but it's the exact same cohort, it's the same group of youths that we're dealing with, except that was 30 years ago. In fact, 2025 will mean 30 years ago in 1995, we executed the CYDP. And now we have the LIU, which really, as I said, the umbilical cord is still connected to the same process. We're still dealing with the same group, except now, in those days, 30 years ago, we were dealing with fathers and grandfathers. Now we're dealing with sons and grandsons of that same group, which means that we have not effectively transformed what is producing that group of youths. And it is not just the criminal element. That's when we see them, the criminal element. But even before, there's dysfunctions going on there that has to be corrected. I'm saying that because, as I say to these youths all the time, look around you. Because alone black boy, black men, young men in this SOE. Young is, we could talk about a female, but it's all young males. And we say to them, look, do you see Maya in you? Do you see mestizo in you? See any orange walk and Corozal in you? Do you see any Mennonites in you? No. The lone black youths from the south side of Belize City, with a sprinkling of some from the north side and a few from the village up in Cotton Tree and Roaring Creek. But it's all black youths. So we cannot continue to just look at this as this is a criminal problem, but we have to broaden it and be able to have the conversation as to what continues to produce this element in our society. And do we just do knee-jerk reactions to get rid of it, or do we look at these underlying factors? So I'm saying, and this clearly, I'm surely not bringing anything new to the powers that be. They already know this. They've seen the reports. They are much more aware of the sociological implications of what we're seeing in Belize and continue to see in Belize than most of us here on the ground. And so it is on them. It's the onus of the leadership that we're not discounting what we're presently doing, and kudos to the process of this LIU. But it doesn't stop there. And there's more that we still have to do. And it's funny, you know, because we're in our society where this thing about victimization, and you're afraid to talk. Well, boy, you better not talk, or else you not get this or you not get that. It really stymies us in Belize. It punks us out. It makes us, it denuters us. It makes us impotent. It makes us apathetic, because we're afraid that, why, you know, if the minister hear me, they say this, or if the prime minister hear me, they say this, then that scholarship opportunity or that business opportunity or will affect my son or affect my daughter. This is the kind of climate that we have developed, not just with this administration, but it's a general thing in Belize that the only way you want to speak your mind is if you could get in a secret and say, boy, make I tell you what I think about them. That's why this Facebook and WhatsApp has become so useful for us, because it's a forum for expressing some of the things that we can't do in public because we're afraid that we're going to be victimized and we're going to be stymied or we're going to be criticized, or all of a sudden the thing that you thought you were going to get, you're not going to get because you made some kind of comment. So we have been placed in a culture of silence when it comes to dealing and speaking openly about these issues. And as I said, this issue of crime that exploded in the 80s and the first, I would say, dynamic initiatives that started, organized initiative that started to try to address it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago. And imagine, putting politics aside, if we were collectively serious about initiating some of these things that the Crime Commission, Mr. George Price put together a crime commission in 1990, headed by the Honorable Charles Bartlett Hyde, who just passed away, God bless his soul, and had many other individuals that sat on that commission in 1990. And if you read the recommendations of that, and I think it was as much as 20 or more recommendations, you could look and see the relevance of it now, nearly 35, 40 years later. It's still the same problems that we're dealing with the same cohort of youth. And a number of attempts have been made, but clearly these attempts have not lessened it. So we have evidence that many young people that were giving some problems, and make us stay with boys, that were giving some battery and problems to their mothers primarily, because we have a problem of absentee fathers. And these mothers got to the point where they could handle their boy when the boy was young, but when the boy started to smell himself around 12 and 13 and staying out late and don't want to listen to his mother, the first place we would send him would be hostel. And in the way back days, we would send him to Listerwell. Or there was another project down south, Lynham. And all of these were designed to try to get these young men back on the right track, and they were many. In fact, some became attorneys, some became businessmen, some became contributing members to society. But it was found when we started reaching into the 80s and the 90s that these projects that worked back in the early 60s were not effective in the 90s. And so we were looking at prison records that saw that this youth now in prison was at a hostel. As a matter of fact, when we look at it, he was at the child care center, which means it's a neglect of this child all the way through its life, even when it was in an institution, and still the issues was not addressed. So as a result now, when we looked at him in prison, we could see that he had been locked into this pattern of behavior. I'm saying all of this to say that this effort that we're making in the SOE is a sign that we are still dealing with this crime situation and trying to deal with it in the most effective way. The strategies of SOE has everything to do with crime statistics. If the crime rate goes up, and that was what Prime Minister Holness was saying, is that we've got to deal with the amount of gang murders that we are having in the Clarendon area. Clarendon is a district in the city of Kingston. And that when we put an SOE, and their SOE is far more drastic than what we're seeing in because they have curfews, they got lockdown areas, they got police locking off certain areas. He says that the crime goes down in those areas. And so people's citizen security, that is an issue, is sort of put to rest, but only for a while, until it comes back up, and then another SOE. So we have to try to not let our pattern be the same, that when the young men are locked down in SOE, and we see the crime, particularly the murder rate, goes down, it is only a sign that they are not active in that kind of behavior. But what happens when they're released and there's nothing there the chances are, common sense, that they will go back to that behavior, which will mean that between now and December, we may be looking at another SOE. So it's very important that we put it in a way dispassionately and look at it in more scientific ways rather than this political thing. We want to talk about get rid of Chester, but we need to do that. Get rid of this whole government card. They don't like black people. And we're not solving the problem. We've got to solve the problem by putting the whole issue on the table and start to apply the kind of common sense that will help us to see some movement in that. Let's take our first break, but let's start with 2 Cents Can, which is brought to you and sponsored by Foot Point Security. as we said yesterday, there are a number of issues that we don't want to bring on the table. This, I think, is what Brother Pot was saying, that we are reluctant to have open conversations on some areas because it's kind of touchy. And we're very, we are very sensitive people. We have a tendency to read into what we think they said, but they still they say. And we call that throw word. And that kind of throw word catch us off guard sometimes because we don't ask for clarification as, wait, say that again? What do you mean? We don't do that. We go away with the idea that he must have talked about me, or he must have tried to talk about my people, or he must have tried to talk about my family. And so our emotion in these kind of situations cause us to have a problem when it comes to putting the facts on the table and asking, these hard questions. It's very easy to dismiss these black boys. It's very easy because they're in the news. They're the highest percentage in the prison. There's just a list of areas where young black youths are stymied, and you can't just come up with the conclusion that all of them bad. They're not good. What, black boy? Then a waste of time. We don't lose this generation. And I'm telling you, there are some black men walking around saying, boy, Nuri, I don't think we could do nothing with this generation. We just have to accept that we elders, we screwed up and we lost this generation. What do you mean by that? You mean we can just rake them up, put them in our garbage truck and carry them someplace and then drop them off somewhere? What do you mean giving up? You can't give up your DNA. You can't give up your generation. And as long as those black boys remain in jail, guess who will be blamed? You think you will get away from blame? And I don't mean only you as a black father or grandfather, but anybody in Belize who allows a certain sector of their population to be stymied. There's a collective responsibility that all of us must share. So you can't say, well, I come from Orange Walk, so that's not my business. Or that ain't Belize City boy, see my pick me up here at Corozal, we don't got any kind of problem. This is the ethnic confusion that can start fueling a conversation that becomes very hostile. Very, very hostile. So we need to put this matter on the table, and I think if it is not government, then certainly the media has to have the courage to put these things on the table and to provoke a conversation so that we can look at not just this, but a number of these other issues that are kind of off the board. We don't want to discuss them kind of thing, except in private. And I'm telling you, when we're not on the air or in public, these conversations are robust. At least the circles that I'm in, the conversation is robust. And people, they express themselves in the most open way. But you have to, I call the radio and make me discuss that because those are some important points that should be brought up. Though I know, then people might hear me, I know, then people then thin skin, and I got this little thing where I work, and last thing I want to do that upset them people. And this is this culture of silence and fear, and therefore just left things as it is. These young men are the result of certain circumstances that exist within the society. I remember back in the late 70s and 80s when the marijuana trade started to take off in Orange Walk. And the question was asked, why would those people who are farmers, who have a legitimate business of, growing the cane and taking it to the mill and etc., why would they turn to the cultivation of marijuana? I mean, and I look at them and they don't even look like they smoke. They don't look like they even have the tradition of the burn no weed So how did they get into this thing of growing marijuana? And they didn't only grow marijuana, they grew one of the best marijuana on the market back in the 80s called the Belizean Breeze. Came from out of Rambo Town. Grown by men who were not involved in smoking marijuana, but saw the need for the economic drop that took place when the sugar prices dropped in the 70s and the early 80s. And being desperate because they owe Belize Bank, they owe the Royal Bank of Canada, I should say, they owed all these banks for these huge trucks and tractors that they had. And it was either losing all that or find a way to fill the gap. And so they started to grow marijuana. High names, some of the high names that we know today were involved in that trade. But nobody didn't come out and castigate and, oh, they're not some terrible people and we need our SOE or we didn't do that. We didn't do that. Yes, we fought with the traffickers. We did the police action with the traffickers. We were even convinced during the Colonel Thompson days, God bless his soul, to bring the Americans in to spray paraquat, a defoliant that you don't fool with. I mean, paraquat is nothing to play with. But we allowed the American DEA to come in with their high-level planes and spray paraquat all over these marijuana fields in the north. That is a part of our history, even though it's maybe 30, 40 years ago, and we may want to forget that or not record it. But if you want to look at what caused that, it was a drop in the economy and people feeling desperate that they needed to find a way to feed their family. How is it that on a smaller scale, we're not seeing a very similar thing happening on the south side of Belize City? Where are the jobs? And I'm talking about where are the jobs to meet the job needs. I'm not saying, boy, some jobs they out there and then boy, they're just lazy, they don't want to work. No. No. I've worked with these youths. If jobs and education is available and affordable, they would take that pursuit rather than trust their lives into being shot and being mowed down and spending years in prison. But these economic opportunities were not there. That's why the government is now moving towards getting $800,000 and trying to put all kinds of little things in place. And thank goodness that this government recognizes that and is trying to put that level of self-employment and generating funds for yourself. They're trying to put that in place. Because all these jobs that we're trying to fill today, even with the BPO, there's still not enough jobs out there for the amount of young people that we have. And the amount of young people, particularly those who haven't reached a certain level of the educational scale that can't hold on to some of the available jobs. So if we understand these circumstances, we are going to better be able to not accept that these young men went into crime. Nobody wants to accept that. I don't accept that. I don't accept, boy, you may have to commit crime, so I'll give you only ease. No, that's not my approach with them. My approach is on an individual basis. You still have to stop that. But as a person who understands science, I understand social science. I understand why we have been dealing with this matter, and I can point out that the same element exists in different territories, jurisdictions, and you can find the same underlying element or antecedents that causes these things to happen. So I am not those and will never be one of those who want to condemn these youths and say, well, yeah, I don't know why we know they get tough up on there. You know, see how then they bring down for we reputation, they make with tourist package look bad. Anytime people, soon we are getting the same kind of declaration like the Americans want to say, you know, what do you call it, travel ban or travel cautions of Americans shouldn't go into certain areas of Jamaica because it's so dangerous. We haven't had that. but we fight very hard to make the Americans know, see, we do something with the current problems to try and make sure. So please, embassy, no put no travel warning out for we, because we've never harmed any tourists, and we've never made any of our tourist resort an area of high-level crimes. We have not had no invasion into the homes and hotels of the tourists. So we can't really be on no watch list when it comes to our tourists. Our problem with crime is in the ghetto. Our problem with crime is in the same community where these youths are coming from. And so when we need to address it, we need to address it holistically at that level. Also wanted to just very briefly say before we go to the next break that sometimes when you have a sore and pus and matter, as we used to say in the old days, gather up in it. You don't want to touch it. You don't want to squeeze out the pus. Even though you know that the beginning of curing is to get all that matter, all that corruption, all that infection out as much as you can so that the healing can start. It's a difficult thing when you're dealing with human beings. It's nasty some places. But if we have the courage to work on it and stop the cuss up one another, we will never agree on everything. This is one of the problems we have when it comes to our teamwork in Belize. We easily broke up our team because we don't know how to debate. We don't know how to argue. So it reduces down to quarreling. Quarrel mean I catch feeling. That mean I walk away from the table. That mean I don't want to deal with he. As long as he or as long as she there on the table, I know and deal with it. Make them boys suffer, but I know I'm getting at that because of him. This is madness. This is madness. You cannot be so immature in your way of analyzing things that you're going to say, look here, make them boy go to jail, but me not sit down with him. Even though he has expertise. You mean you can't say, well, boy, me and you on a personal level. I got that issue with a lot of people. On a personal level, you don't invite me to dinner. You don't want to invite me to lunch because you don't feel that kind of closeness to me. But you recognize where I could bring to the table. And therefore you say, boy, make we sit down. Why? Because it's not about me and you. It's about that issue. And unless me and you could to really humble ourselves, which asks the question, where has our spirituality gone? If we can't humble ourselves and say, well, guess what? We're up on the same team because that is the enemy, you don't know my enemy. If we cannot overcome that, it's not only the issue of crime that will affect us, it's everything. Because in order for us to make progress, and believe me, colonialism has put us in a quagmire. It's almost like one who egg. You try to get out this area, that one problem. You go try to get out this area, and problem. We're in our quagmire. And if we can't work together with a single vision, we don't make it. People like say, hey, we need unity, man. You know, if we can't get the masses to unite, and make we unite, you know, this is what Marcus Garvey is called. But the masses will never unite. It's not the way it goes in history. Study it. It takes a group of people to unite, leaders to unite. And when they clarify what they want and where they're going, then they go out to the masses, and the masses follow leadership. That's the reality. But stop saying, oh, what we need is unity, man. That broad unity that don't happen, where happen? Where have you seen it happen in history? It doesn't go like that. Whether it's the Bolshevik, whether it's the Christian, whether it's what has happened with the Vietnam, wherever you find the masses coming together, it's because of the leadership that got those masses together. So our leadership, unfortunately, continues to fall into political framework so that when the political effort is made, then there's another side that will not support it because I know they're with that political group. This side do something, I can't support it because I'm on a different political group. So clearly, we have to move away from this small kind of thinking and broaden ourselves to say, regardless to what side you depend, regardless to what religion you, regardless to what the tone of your skin, which district and tongue you come from, we have some common interests for the survival of Belize, and I've got to put my personal biases and prejudices aside, hold my corner, and find out how to work with you. That's called maturity. We'll take our next break, and when we come back, we'll have our guests.
Let's take a journey through the core functions of the social
than just a snack. They're a proud product of Belize.
Mike, the church, the religious community, where these values used to be almost naturally being taught, what happened there? What has really happened where that responsibility? Yeah, go ahead.
A funny thing, because the old adage, throw the baby out with the bathwater, applies. And religion came with a lot of other attachments, if you will, to it. They do a good job as far as instilling some of the principles, but at the same time, they inject and push in on the picnic head some doctrine there where at the end of the day, they don't got no proof about, which is why right now we see the problems we're seeing in the Middle East. But God gave Israel some kind of land, and Israel got 12 picnic, only come one, they claim it. But that's apartheid. The thing is that when these children, when you have these children, you have to be following a straight line of trying to get them to be better human beings, and not necessarily human beings that will fill the agenda that you have developed. If they had something like that and it didn't work, it was probably because most of the focus went on funding. Because once the money get in it, once they start to give money for things, problems start, and at some point it won't last, because built on a good foundation. No?
One of the things that we've noticed, and believe me, that is an accepted position, that listen, it has to go back to parental responsibility. In the US, I don't know if you're aware, they've gone one step further, that a child who is responsible for the shooting of some children, I forget, there's been so many of those mass shootings.
Yeah.
But the last one that happened, the last big one that happened, the parent were taken to court. And so the mother and the father is now serving time because of their neglect of that child that was showing signs that he had certain kinds of problem, but yet they allowed him to have access to the father's weapon. And the child, if they were noticing, was doing all kinds of drawings and different things that should have indicated that your child is having a problem. They even got notes from the teachers that, guess what, this child in class is a problem. You got to address this. And so when that was brought up in the court, then when that was brought up in the court, that there's been a long series of neglect, those parents now are serving time for this child that shut up so many people. Now I'm asking the question, do we take on that method to say that if you have failed with your child, then you also are partially responsible for what that child has done because of your neglect from the early development of that child? Do you think that can be justified?
I don't know if there are any absolutes as such. Every situation will have to be.
But do you think that approach should even be
let me finish.
entertained?
There's another word saying that I like. Forget the mistake, but remember the lesson. Those are only two people that were put in jail. But the situation is far-reaching, and hopefully that people will see that as an example of what can happen and will happen, and let that be a deterrent for the ways of just make them pick, when they want to.
Yeah,
so that as far as that is concerned, that's how I see that.
Well, I was just using it as do you think that parents should have, not necessarily as far as sending them to jail, but should parents take any responsibility for their children's criminal behavior?
Depends on the circumstances. Again, you can't, no absolutes. You can't judge everything by the same yardstick here. But if a situation comes up where a child gets in trouble, those are some of the areas that you can look at. And if you can get the evidence like they probably did in that case, that what they did was somehow contributing to it, they allow the boy to play guns, then buy one gun for the boy, any kind of thing like that, then certainly they were responsible in that. Or if they made it go out to play a pity pat, and not to take care of the picnic and the guide in the right way, then yes, they can be held responsible and should be held responsible.
You have an excellent model program going, brother. Do you have a lot of parental engagement? I don't mean one or two, but parental engagement. Because you look like you got over 50, 75 young people that is in your program consistently. Do you have that kind of parental engagement, especially from fathers?
You know, it's funny because I did not get that here, so I moved to where it was. I have recently been redirecting my efforts towards the Yabra area.
Down the Yabra.
But people have got a vibrant program going. I want to big up Bolomak, and I know what a Bolomak real name, but you know, former football player.
Yeah.
And they spend a lot of time within kids to teach them about football. I think the way to go, Nuri, is to establish sporting facilities, put in programs that keep these children focused on things other than the negative. And in that same process there, which is what we try to do, is use different lessons and different examples, different situations to teach them the do's and the don'ts of life. Because they have to know it in order to be able to follow a good path, no?
I remember our brother and your brother, Evan X. Hyde, really going back over 40 years, had been promoting this idea of sports being a part of what can engage our young people and keep them, especially boys, and keep them away from the violence. And gradually we're seeing attention being paid to that area, that suggestion. But do you think that enough is being done when you recognize the amount of money that is put into sports development in the country? Do you think that that is meeting the mark?
Let us think about money. You know how much that $6.9 million could have done? So certainly not. Enough is not being done. The father of modern Olympics, Pierre de Lubricant, once said, sports build character. Sports build character in our children and turn them into good adults. Now, there are two things I believe that's integral to living a happy life. One that socializing and one that's sports. And these are the two things that we're trying to focus on here. Because when you learn to talk to one another, a lot of these children can't even speak to the one. They don't got the confidence to stand up and have a conversation. You usually turn into insults, which turns into a fight. You try to talk to them and you're not getting attention at all. Anything we say, just go and turn around and do something completely different. So there has to be people, and there are many retired people out there, and this is why I've tried to fill this role. I'm retired. I can't leave son in the community every month. I don't need nobody for to give me no government, because if you rely upon the government, you will be lost if you don't sing their song. So we have to do it. Outside of that, there are a lot of retired people in most of these communities. Get together, get one little group of the boy there, carry them for a little fishing trip, carry them somewhere out there go play. Do something. But just get them together and teach them how to communicate with one another. Just be there to give them a little direction when it's necessary.
And I think that idea, and really it's not a new idea, but you're surfacing it again, about parents and teaching mothering skills. Maybe the government, because we're always expecting the government to play the role and lead the role, but there are other non-government entities like the church that can get members of the church, senior women in the church, to create that kind of forum where you're teaching young girls about things like motherhood. You don't think that will work?
Boy, Jim Reeves, and yes, there's nothing new under the sun, so don't try for a minute to think that I'm here suggest that I'm owning any of these ideas. I'm just saying, no? Jim Reeves sing on a song, My Cathedral. You ever get a chance to listen to it fully? The church is the world out there. All the way that members of the church, at some points we become the preacher, we take the pulpit, we have to pass on the lessons to these kids. As far as going in and building and sit down, no sir, I don't want no picnic mind go through that. We have to kneel from station to station, no sir. And I have to listen to something from you where yesterday me hear about something where you do. Not look like the thing where you to tell me for do. So the church and the whole community, it takes a village to raise the children, man. One at a time, we pick them and select and grow them up, no?
Yeah.
In the right way.
Well,
so
maybe,
that might be.
And I hear you.
Mention the church.
I hear you. And when I say the church, and I'm talking about the Muslim community, I'm talking about other religious faiths likewise. And I really wasn't talking so much about bringing people into your clustered area, because yes, then that sounds like come in here and we can convert you and help you. I'm talking about those persons, you know, when you look at the prophets and messengers of God, Jesus, you talk about Muhammad, they were not in buildings. But we seem to have turned religion into come to my building, come to my property, and I'm a savior. The
idea with you when you come.
Yeah, the idea was to go out, to be out in the area. So when you look, you don't see the religious community, unless they come out to preach on the corner. But you don't see them organizing and getting in and creating those kinds of forums, because it's not a matter of come to the church or come to the masjid so that we could teach you how to be better mothers. But it's taking those elder members in the community, organize them, and find a way that you could get that into an outreach situation. And that's what we do to in fact solve that problem. Before we go though,
let me say one more thing before I go on. I don't want nobody to feel like I appreciate the anti-God thing here.
No, G-Mike.
Got to be at forefront of this, no? Yeah. So that not got nothing to do with anti-faith or any of that. Everybody got their own way of doing, of having faith and whatnot. And in my opinion, there has to be a God, and that has to be top and center of everything.
Anybody who knows you or read what you say on Facebook know that you are a strong believer, and you're not a churchy or masjid type of believer. You're an open person who believe in doing the right thing, and that's been your faith for all the time. But I want to go back, because we're almost at the end, for you to say a little bit about the program that you and Pilaf have been working on. And I believe Pilaf is getting support also from LIU, by the way, as a part of the support of what he's doing. But talk a little bit about that new initiative, because I know him to paint up and set up and had a marathon out there, and talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I think that Yabra has been neglected, and we have to bring it back. I noticed Kaya Katus is doing something back there, but I don't know if I hope you cross-check with
G-Mike, G-Mike, I'm sorry. I got to call you, and I just want to give them a chance. Maybe they'll make a contribution to what we're talking about. Yes, welcome, caller.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
I take this opportunity to call on behalf of all parents who have lost a young child by gun violence, and I'm speaking specifically about young teenagers, innocent children. It has been 3 years today that my son was shot, and it is one of the many unsolved murders, and by some of the same culprits that you guys are talking about right now. As far as I'm concerned, they are despicable, right? And it hurts to know that there is no closure. So I know exactly what parents like they do in Gabriel's mother and the other ones are feeling. Because, you know, you would want to know why, you would want to know, you know, either Sister Gil, Castan Gil was shot on this day 3 years ago, and there has been no, it hasn't been solved. So I just take this time to call on behalf of those people who are in the same shoes as I am.
Yeah, and there are many, Brother Gil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a reminder, you know, to the police department and to the community of the many unsolved murders of innocent children. So thank you for the time.
No, brother.
But I just wanted to express that.
Thank you very much for calling also, Brother Gil. Yeah, G-Mike, that's a reality check, because indeed it could...
I'm trying to see how it ties into what Wayman said.
Yeah.
I understand. I know Brother Gil well.
I know him well likewise.
A child, actually. So I don't know what the full circumstances are, but I don't if it's he might need to get with the police if there are any updates.
No, well, there's just a lot of cases.
Some cold cases get solved also. So.
Yeah, the cases like that. But continue.
And there's no, this is not at all trying to downgrade the importance of what happened to Anna, because for a parent losing a child certainly cannot be a nice thing. But that's why we have to be careful that we make sure our children walk in the right way and stay on the right path. If it means shunning some company that you being able to recognize when things they get tarry, and I know we in that era there. See what I'm saying?
But you were talking about
you're talking about the before I go, I want to talk about the football game that we have tomorrow in San Ignacio at the Norman Brasta Stadium. We have 3 teams going, under 17, under 15, no, under 17, under 13, and under 11. We got one league under 11 team where they play, we injecting with some of the boys from this area, and men they're unbeatable. Right now that you really want to sit down and watch them boys play. You wonder if they're really in under 11, because some young boys playing some very good ball, and there's hope for the future. I'm hoping that sometime later on you hear something, because once you keep promoting these programs, man, once you keep them alive, and it's also involved the parents who allow them to come out and know what they do and take care of them when they're home. You can't, if they come out there and play ball, but when they go home and smoke weed or play card, then you have to keep them engaged in other things too also. That a concerted effort, and all of we have to get on board to make this happen.
Indeed. Well,
but certainly the Yabra one now. I want to say one more thing, because the Yabra field, and I want to big up Tambran and his crew. I saw they out there again cutting and keep the field cut. What we need, they want riding more. I've suggested to Pilar that we do a few fundraising barbecues and try to raise money for buy one and little, and we just ride around the field and keep it cut, because that's all it takes sometimes to make it level, and you find out where the holes there, you fill them up one by one. But Yabra area, the environment itself, the ambience of Yabra, spectacular, find it nowhere else.
Absolutely, brother.
Man, you sit down and watch on football with the background, the backdrop being the Caribbean Sea.
Nice sea breeze coming in,
So we got one lead draining at the side by Wesley too. We fix the fence and we put the wire up, but we need to cover that drain, and things like that I think government could help us with, and with the hope that at some point they will jump in and say, boy, make we keep the uplift of this place going, because it's looking much better. If you pass there lately, Nuri and so on, real Yabra green repeal off, paint up the fence and the paint up really shack where you got there.
Aside.
Man, we have to big up
all the
really
time.
big up
All the time. And Pilaf, no man we talk much,
No, you're not going to say nothing. You really have to
man not talk much.
Back in a corner, say a lot. And sometimes say, what you think, Bob? Why you just sit down to watch me? But
exactly.
it work, and it work, and the scheme, and when they move, something happen, right?
So, and that's a whole generation of work there for decades seem to do that. G. Mike, I'll give you a last word, and thank you again for kind of a last minute call there, and I appreciate your coming on, because you make it lively. You're a critical thinker, and that's important for our people. I'll give you a last word.
Nuri, thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure when you could talk to people, and later on people say, boy, I hear what you say, and they might have something about what you said, and whether objections or support, no? But I think we have to keep the conversation going, keep discussing with each other. Like I said, that one part of it is socializing, where we talk to one another, and then competition, sports, culture, arts, where we keep these children engaged and contesting to be the best that they can be. Hopefully, forgive me, choked up again under the weather and bitch. Hopefully, in the future, we'll see a lot more than just one athlete at the Olympics, and we can make a difference in it. I personally never watched the Olympics. I boycotted because the Israelis were allowed to partake. I'm saying that situation has to stop. The whole world is telling them to stop. They better stop, man. And we in Belize have made the statement from the start. We know this. We know to support this. We have to continue raising our voices. Free Palestine, because then people have got the right to exist just like everybody else. Just like we, just like the Guatemalans, just like the Americans. Everybody have a right to exist. This is a one planet belonging to all of us. Respect everything.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, and because we cannot afford to forget 40,000 people have been killed. 40,000. Thank you, G. Mike. We appreciate your being a part of it. this morning. And we've pretty much come to our close. Let's take our final break and we'll come back and make some closing comments.